Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Curious is Better podcast. I'm Craig Lamb, the host from Innovative, and today we have Graham Smith with Babylon Micro Farms to talk about his stack, the product, and the things that they're up to. So, welcome, Graham. I appreciate you coming.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me on the podcast.
So, let's just start off. Tell us the origin story of Babylon Micro Farms.
Sure. So, um, we've been at it about 7 years ago, 7 years or so now. And the first few were kind of garage tinkering. Actually started as a class project at University of Virginia. I met my co-founder at sort of a entrepreneurial clubhouse of sorts. We were all kind of pitching different ideas, trying to find a team to help build projects we were interested in. And my co-founder, you know, basically introduced all of us to this idea or system of growing called hydroponics. And if your listeners aren't familiar, it's basically a way to grow crops without soil. So it's usually, you've got like some sort of inert foam plug or something like that holding the seed and giving it access to nutrient rich uh, solution. And so, usually very finely controlled, often done indoors, either on a greenhouse or a vertical farm where there's, sort of stacks of produce growing under LEDs. And the industry has some pretty, touts some pretty mind blowing stats like this way of growing saves 90% of the water use. Usually you don't need to use pesticides and herbicides because it's so controlled and often indoors, and the plants grow 2 or 3 times as quickly. So that all very much caught my eye, and it took us a little bit to kind of figure out where we would go with the product. As startups do, we kind of had some pivots along the way, but really from the beginning, we're interested in finding a way to make those benefits more accessible because we saw that it was there were really only large scale players in the space building huge warehouse size farms to grow with these methods. And now on the other end of the spectrum, very DIY oriented products where usually homeowners, sometimes businesses, but usually not, would learn how to grow hydroponically and get on their hands and knees with a pipette, measuring nutrients and acid
Uh-huh.
and finding seeds at Lowe's or whatever. Uh, and I think that, you know, both of those ends of the spectrum make a lot of sense, but we were interested in figuring out how can we use technology to make this more accessible to individuals, families, businesses, whoever wanted to have some self-sufficiency, grow their own produce on site, capture all of those benefits.
Yeah,
So
so let's help people visualize though, because maybe they haven't seen it. Is that what's the dimension of this? This is something that you could put into the university's cafeteria, right? Like
yeah,
what
yeah,
what's the
exactly.
dimension of
So
it?
so the current iteration we've tried a little bit smaller, we've tried a little bit larger. Again, over the years, iterated and sold one or two of each iteration just to get customer feedback. But where we've landed is something that is about the size of a maybe double door commercial refrigerator, if you can imagine that. So about 5.5 or so feet wide, 8 feet tall, 2.5 feet deep. So it's sort of a balance where it's large enough that there's actually an interesting, you know, amount of yield. Like it's a substantial amount of produce, but small enough that it can be relatively rapidly deployable. So we can just, ship it on a truck, have somebody wheel it in, bring it on an elevator, etc. So we're really mindful of balance those things with the size.
That's awesome. Can you talk about some of the technologies that you use? Because I imagine there's a lot of automations that are going on. There's a lot of controls. You might be doing some biometrics, stuff like that, to make sure that you can ensure yield and stuff like that.
Yep. Yeah. So, and I forgot to answer the last part of your question, but so these are usually placed very front of house at our customer location. So we'll sell these to corporate dining facilities, university dining halls. They'll be in the dining room of a senior living home, lobby of a Hilton hotel,
Yeah,
usually
because they're cool.
very,
They're
yeah,
aesthetically
very front
interesting.
facing. Yeah.
Yeah.
We use special LEDs that have a very high, color rendering index. The colors really pop. The glass is very nice and tinted. MacBook sort of anodized aluminum finish on the frame. So very much meant to be front of house to actually capture the attention and engage the people who are walking by and have them kind of appreciate the quality of the produce that they're eating and the freshness and where their food comes from.
Yeah,
Um,
and the
so
unit is eye grabbing, like just
yeah,
by
thank you,
itself.
thank you. Um, so because we're selling into these operations, we've got people operating the farms. It might be a chef or a groundskeeper. There's sort of a wide array of people who are running the farms, and they're all generally very busy. They're not that interested in adding a lot of work and understanding how to measure nutrients out and adjust the pH and buy cleaning supplies on the way into work at Lowe's. So we've really designed everything to be very turnkey, and so that's really informed how we have developed the technology and what we've the sort of requirements we've set out for the technology to do. So at least on the software side, it kind of breaks down into a few applications. There is the firmware that runs on the farm, um, and that's controlling sort of local automation feedback loops. So the farm it's internet connected, so it will actually go and download not only the latest firmware build if there is one, but configurations like a what we call a plant recipe. So depending on what recipe is, that controls your
So
nutrient
there's a
level.
controller, Graham, that will pull
Yep.
fluids and whatever's needed to make the cocktail to actually distribute to the plants.
Yep. Yep. Essentially,
So they
yes.
don't have to think about it at all.
Yeah. So it's got a bunch of sensors like nutrient concentration, which is called an electrical conductivity sensor, pH, water temperature, air temperature, humidity, water level, flow rate of the water coming into the unit through the water line. So it's pulling in all of that data and according to the plant recipe, controlling different outputs to meet that recipe. So if we say this crop needs 16 hours of light, 8 hours of darkness, the controller, has downloaded that recipe, determined 16 hours, and then it will control the lights to match that recipe
That's
or,
awesome.
control
Is that controller? Is that the basis? Is I believe it's called the Babylon IQ. Is that
we sort of bundle everything in a way that like helps us communicate the technology. So all of the automation, on the farm, our mobile app, and our sort of cloud application and our monitoring, we kind of bundle all of that into Babylon
that's all
IQ
the
and say
Babylon?
because we, have created and support Babylon IQ, your farm will be automated and will provide all the support you need. You don't need to worry about learning how to grow hydroponically.
So I
That's one.
imagine that this takes a lot of different disciplines, right? So do you have an internal team exclusively that developed this, the IoT piece and the firmware, as well as the software interface, mobile application? They're all staff.
Yep. Yeah, so we've got three engineers and they're all really strong generalists because it's a relatively small team to touch a lot of different types of application because there's the firmware application, there's a mobile app that our operators use to interface with the farm, there's our cloud application, which is kind of the back end, and then we've got our visualization, like dashboards that help our team understand how farms are behaving at kind of a deeper level than our mobile app shows to our operators. So it's four or five applications spread among
So,
three
and
engineers.
is that the last one, the dashboards? That's web based, and that's like an aggregator.
Yep, yep, exactly.
Very cool. Do you in the automations? Do you also have any predictive tools that are like perhaps if there's mechanical failure, or if there's like flow issues or anything like that? Are you doing sensors in that regard as well?
Yeah, I think there's a lot more to be done um, in the future when we have the bandwidth, but our sort of trajectory with each as we discover a new type of issue is to, at first, maybe it's actually a customer that finds out about it and they have to reach out to us to go and solve it. From there, we'll sort of manually go through our dashboards to try to find that issue and resolve it. And then from there, as we get a better understanding of this new issue, we'll build automated alerts to detect it and just sort of drop an action item into our team if we have to resolve it, or directly into the mobile app if we need our operator to do something. And
So
so
as
the
the CTO, though, I suspect that your mantra is like fix it through software or automation, right? You don't want to put anything back on your customers that will create some manual spot or break in that process chain, right?
yeah, but some of the issues are, you know, operators just not following what they need to do. Um, so sometimes we truly do need to just like basically deliver that action item to the operator, which maybe means we didn't
Like
train them
replenishing,
appropriately. Or what was that?
replenishing, like
Yeah,
replenishing any
swapping
kind of,
swapping
yeah.
nutrients, taking a humidity dome off of a germinating crop early enough.
Hmm.
Uh, So, we'll just reach out to them, tell them to do that, or drop that into the mobile app as an action item. But then also try to figure out where did we mess up to cause the operator to not have the knowledge they need to have done that in the first place. Like maybe the training didn't cover it well, the documentation didn't cover it. Maybe we need the information on how to do that in a better place in the mobile app, etc.
So the end user, the absolute end user, their only interaction with microfarms is to harvest, right? Or they just
Uh, the main, you know, 3 or 4 items are plants. So we deliver a pre-seeded plant pack basically. So they drop that in the farm to plant it, scan a QR code in our mobile app, and that's what tells them when to transplant. So about 2 weeks later, they'll transplant and spread them out into the next tier basically.
I
Uh,
see. So that once some kind of like root system is
yep,
visually confirmed, then they can
yep,
move them.
yeah, and then harvest and clean. So about 4 steps.
See, what were some of the biggest technical obstacles that you faced when you were going from concept to the first iteration or the first iteration to the second or current? Were there any war stories you have as far as
I would
achieving?
say the biggest obstacle, I think, because we have such a sort of integrated offering, our challenges are very much more on like the on making things work together cohesively for like to create a beautiful experience. Whereas with something that is maybe strictly software, you have more exacerbated like scaling issues and like infrastructure issues, because if you've got a mobile app and you're going from 100 users to 10,000 in a month or something, you're going to have very different challenges than we do because we actually don't have that many operators relative to our software. Like we have 500 operators. It's not actually growing super quickly for, a software application. So
Sure.
we're not, we don't have like very serious scaling issues. A lot of our challenges are more how can we create a beautiful experience and make sure that like everything we build actually is cohesive with the hardware and the customer support team, um,
Yeah.
and
But
and stuff.
that presents its own challenges, right? Maintaining elegance
Yeah,
rather than being rigid and just we're manufacturing food, right? It's like to create that to maintain that elegance and create where it's almost like um, invisible to the end user
yeah,
about all the complications that are going on
yeah.
behind that curtain, right? That got you. Where do you see Babylon microfarms going? Like, say, in the next 2 to 3 years, what hand does technology have in that as far as when you're thinking about your roadmap or doing planning?
I think at this point, our current design or hardware design at least, is relatively old. Like I think it's done its job. It's still, I think, um, probably the sort of the leader within the industry. Like we actually don't have a lot of competitors. But we've learned a lot on how to, create the most reliable, easily manufactured, easily, distributed, easy to maintain. So a big part of our roadmap is going to be deploying that next generation hardware next year, which will likely replace our current flagship model gallery, but allow us to scale quite a bit more. Like we're sort of making do with what we've got for now, but that's going to be really key. as well as there's still a lot of room to go on the user experience because there's 1,000 ways somebody who doesn't know how to grow plants can mess it up. And I think we've chipped away at a lot of the major ones, but there's still like quite a lot of work to do.
Sure.
Um, and make it easier for us to scale our support of these systems. So I mentioned that sort of trajectory for each alert or issue that can arise. We've probably got dozens more of those that will be very valuable as our fleet grows and we start to see more of each of these sort of types of issues. Right now, we have a customer support team that can kind of smooth all of that over. Like when a new problem arises, they do a pretty good job of making it work. But as the fleet grows, we get more and more of each of those things and need to resolve it at the root cause level. Um, and there's still a lot we can do to give operators the right information at the exact time they need it. So I would say it's a pretty opportunity rich environment. So we're usually it's challenging to prioritize what exactly to work on at any given time.
And you have plans to scale your internal team based on like distribution numbers, like how large the fleet is and things like that. I suspect. Like,
Uh, Probably like a little bit, but we're really trying to stay as lean as possible.
sure, of course.
So we not at least not drastically.
Mhm.
And I would say just in the past probably year or two, we've really transitioned from like building a foundation and the infrastructure to being able to focus more on actually improving the user experience and like features that will, you know, promote a beautiful experience. So I think that feels like at least a little bit of breathing room.
How about the hot topic, Graham, of the day, this AI business? You guys have any plans or use, or maybe current uses for any AI tools in maybe forecasting yield or at the business operational level, as far as maybe prospecting or your addressable market, anything? I'm trying to tee up, but
Yeah,
are you,
yeah. I can't really speak to other areas of the company. Like I know we do use it in some ways for prospecting, just because you mentioned that. Certainly, like writing, drafting, copy,
sure?
stuff like that. On the more engineering side, um, I think we're kind of getting to the point where the AI tools at the application layer are actually getting pretty good. Like I feel like I'm always kind of trying things out every when I see new tools come online, and I feel like just now are some of them getting good enough for like enterprise use, but certainly at the sort of more base layer of coding tools. So like we use Windsurf, but have tried out all of them. Um, and I think so. All of our engineers are using that, which I think helps them. You know,
We started mucking around with that Copilot in some of our dev environments. You seen that?
yeah, we tried the big three, and I think there are actually more now, like Copilot, Windsurf, Cursor. At the time when we really got on board last year, Windsurf seemed to be the best, but I think they're all really good now.
Yeah.
So I think that
I think
really
there's
like
some great uses. You just have to be very careful with your repo, right? And just,
yeah.
but yeah.
So
How about, well, go ahead.
I was just gonna say like we certainly don't view it as like let's hire more junior engineers or less engineers because
We have,
AI will do it for us. It's more of like we have very experienced engineers who know what the code should look like and how it should be structured. Let's have them focus on what they do best, which is that critical thinking, decision
uh-huh.
making, and focus a little bit less on building templates.
Yeah, we share the same philosophy on that. It's where it's appropriate, great, but that doesn't alleviate you from having
Yeah,
critical thinking and architecture and modeling and things like that. How about for the application users? Are you exploring any AI tools there as far as
yeah. We again, I think some of the off the shelf tools are really getting pretty good. One of them is there are plenty of platforms out now that can sort of package and model in a way that you can train it on your own documentation and then like present that to either people internally or your customers. So we use a platform that we basically just upload all of our documentation, like our product support wiki or training materials.
So like a
It
custom GPT.
Yep. Yeah, it handles the training and that makes it extremely easy to just drop it right into our mobile app. So we've found that that does a pretty good job of filtering out some of the more basic questions that sometimes do make it to our account,
That's
our
awesome. Yeah,
support team.
because
And I don't think,
it's so much better than a chat bot, right? Because it's authentic but accurate information and it's accessible in standard language.
yeah, it's like actually pretty good. We were very careful. We don't want to deploy a bot that feels like it's a waste of time because plenty of companies do right now. I think have bots that
For
are not
sure.
quite there yet, but
It's
but
one of the
I think
things I'm most actually excited about is that because I thought the era of chatbots sucked. Like it was
yeah.
horrible, but custom GPTs, when they're company specific, product specific, I think those are going to be very helpful and starting to see them roll out.
Yeah, and I think that it'll be a better experience for our operators too, because if they have a basic question, it's actually kind of a barrier to pick up the phone and call our account rep. Like ideally, that would just be for when you really need, you have a kind of a meaty question that's more complicated. You need like a deeper level of understanding. But if you just have a question, you know, how long do I have to take off this humidity dome or something? It's actually very easy to just like shoot that question in our AI chatbot.
Yeah, for
We've
sure.
sort of switched it. So we used to have like a support tab that has all these different things like, product support documentation, submit a ticket, troubleshooting videos. And we've just replaced the entire tab with our AI assistant. And it basically triages to those things. So I think it's even a sort of a simpler mental model for our customers. Like support, I go here, and it will just guide me to exactly what I need. I don't need to think like, oh, is this better for a video? Should I call my account rep? So
Yeah, they're
very,
they're they're way more effective, way more effective.
yeah,
Let me wrap up with a kind of a big question for you to consider. It's like, so you've been on the journey from concept to, a product deployed in the field, and now you're on iterations of that product. What are some things you can impart on some other innovators, leaders? Like, what are the things that you know now that you didn't know before that you should be appreciative of in that journey, technology or otherwise?
yeah. I mean, a lot of it really is the basics. Like listen to your customer. It's sometimes it's so hard to get or easy to get caught up in sometimes things that keep you keep you away from focusing on the basics. Like it sounds very obvious. Talk to your customer, build what they need, but it's so easy to get caught up in the momentum of what you think the market needs, or and like what's the next hot feature I can build. Um, but the fundamentals are so important. Talk to your customers, understand what they need, build that, iterate quickly. It doesn't don't let the what's the saying? Don't let perfect be the enemy of good, or whatever. Get stuff out there and get feedback to be able to iterate quickly. Especially if you're working on hardware, you do need to be a little more careful and plan ahead. You can't patch hardware in the same way that you can patch software. You can still do iterations of prototypes and get very valuable information, but just when you're ready to actually deploy a lot of them, you want to make sure that that's pretty good.
Yeah.
And you
Well,
want to
when you're in
surround,
your garage and you just have a pie that you're monkeying around with,
yeah,
right? It's
yeah.
it's
So
different.
like you got to make sure that you understand the ramifications and the different skill sets that are required, the team you need to surround yourself with to make sure that that works. Like how to actually, um, build like a supply chain and a quality system that is going to result in a product that's reliable. So I don't know. I mean, it's really
Yeah, like
it is
remember,
really
just
basic
remember the
there.
mission, right? Remember the roots while you're
Yeah,
doing it. I think you're right. As a technologist too, these are one of the things that we work on all the time. Is that you have to remember the problem you're trying to solve, because it's like you can impress yourself with all the things you could do, but then
yeah,
you don't impose the why. Why am I doing this, right?
yeah, yeah.
So
Product
I
market
think
fit
that's good
is
advice.
is a is a challenge, and
Sure.
you can
Well,
never
Graham, I
find.
want to thank you for joining. Like this has been great, and the story is fantastic. So, if anybody wants to check out Graham and their product, please visit Babylon Micro Farms. And again, thanks a lot, Graham. It's been nice
Yeah.
chatting with
Thank
you.
you for having me on the show. It was a lot of fun.
Thanks a lot.
All right. See ya.